Dr. Bill Romani leads Innovate Carolina's Design and Innovation for the Public Good team, which focuses on creating solutions to societal challenges through innovation and design thinking. His work spans entrepreneurship, storytelling, and community impact. And right now, he's documenting stories of Black entrepreneurs disrupting system inequities in red-line communities. Dr. Stacy Grau specializes in design thinking to drive user-centered innovation and social impact. At Texas Christian University, Dr. Grau teaches courses in innovation, leadership, and human-centered design. Royea is an experienced social entrepreneur who is passionate about finding the mutually beneficial solutions for partners and clients through meaningful business development. She is a consultant and community advisor who uses human-centered design in public health and digital transformation. Cherney is a creative and strategic leader whose expertise lies in human-centered design, strategy development, and cross-cultural leadership. She's unfortunately not able to join us in person today, but she is with us on the room in Zoom. So please help me welcome the Human-Centered Design Outcomes Collaborative.
Julia, thank you for the great introduction and for putting all this together. This has been very easy, so thank you for that. My name is Bill Romani, as she mentioned. I'm the Director of Design and Innovation for the Public Good at the University of North Carolina. And before we begin, in your box, in your crates there, are big Post-it notes, either this size or the ones with the lines on them. And I'd like you to pull one of those out. And I would like you to consider the following question. And I know Tyson is working with our folks online. If you would be able to put your reflections and answers in the chat, that would be great, and we will capture those. What I would like you to do is I'd like you to think about a time when you've been part of a group or a network that has truly been relational, where you've been in flow. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. The group's been interconnected, collaborative, acting in an ethical way that everybody can get behind, and really designing with. So I'd like you to think about some time, hopefully times, that's happened. And the question that I would like you to respond to, what was the purpose or the goal of that work? What did you set out to accomplish? I'll give you about 30 or 40 seconds to put that in the chat or to write those things down. You're finishing up your answer, what's some of the great work that you've all done when you've been on these teams? What are some things people have been working on?
I have an after-school program called Black Girls Singing Through Dance.
Awesome.
And it's a transdisciplinary program that we do with the community. And it's really great because it's all focused on capacity building and fun and embodiment and design and making and
Dancing.
Yeah. Really sustaining pedagogies, but whatever, it's fun.
What else? What are some other great things? I'll go Arabic. If I learned how to do that at lunch, I'll just start picking people, as was told. What is some other great work? Yeah, what have you done?
As soon as you posed this question, my heart felt happy. My current team in counseling services are incredible. Like, we have, of course, we have the overlapping aspect of being therapists, but all of our backgrounds are a little bit different as far as our training. And every single person, like I am so grateful to have them. And so like we really feel like everybody's on the same page as far as we are here to really listen and support and encourage not only Elon students, but each other. And it's magic. I use the word magic, like I get giddy coming in.
Maybe one more. What do you think?
Different area of inquiry, but improvisational theater. I have found some amazing, supportive, open-minded, learning, motivated people in that community that I'm just so grateful to have encountered.
Well, those are great. So I'm going to ask you to hang on to those thoughts, and I'm going to ask you another question here in a couple of minutes. So about a year, almost a year and a half ago, there was a number of us at several institutions that, like a lot of you, we really felt like we knew the value of human-centered design, where it could go, what kind of things it could get for us. But the problem that we were having is not a lot of other people at our institutions knew it, or they might be aware of it, but they wanted to know what value it would provide for them. We needed kind of Stacy will talk about a return on investment. We didn't want to make it quite the business perspective, but really that's what we needed to do. We need to be able to convey the return on investment for engaging in this process that we all knew was better. And then the other thing we wanted to do is make it as easy as possible for us and for other people once they realize the value to use and to implement that. And so we went to the seminal paper, if you didn't want to start looking at the value of human-centered design in business, about IBM. And all of the different ways that human-centered design was used at IBM. We realized that really what we wanted our focus to be was more on the work that we were doing at universities, and in particular, public universities like the University of North Carolina that have a mission to the communities that they serve. And so, no, please, jump right in, yeah. Oh, and people are sharing on the chat, I can see that, thank you very much.
You can keep going, we're just gonna reshare your screen.
So we started, I'll just grab this. So we started with these initial ideas, but we wanted to get more input. So we put out a call to start this collaborative group. And really, it was quite organic. Who do you know? What listservs are you on? What organizations are you already part of? Who could we get that wanted to share this work with us? And we had about 40 people respond to that from around the world. And what we did was we set out with the goals to be able to articulate this return on investment of human-centered design in research and practice. We wanted to create a set of tools and resources to support key interest groups interested in integrating human-centered design into projects or programs. So again, that's what we started with, but then we expanded those goals to also include improving and operationalizing standards and qualities in the application of human-centered design in research and practice. And then, once we did that, remember, one of our initial pain points was that not as many people understood, we're like this group and understands the value. How do we disseminate these findings and engage critical interest groups through proactive communication strategies to elevate human-centered design? That was the goal of our work. And so we had this group of 40 people that really surprised. We thought if we got like 18, that would be pretty good. Maybe 12 would be able to do some things. We got 40. So then we had to consider how we were going to move the collaborative forward to do what we had to do. So I'm going to ask you a second question. And again, folks that are online, please feel free to put in the chat. When you think about these awesome organizations you've been part of, or groups that you've been part of, or networks, what was the most important thing for you and that team to do as you prepared for that work? Sometimes it just happens by accident, right? Just a spontaneous collision of well-intentioned people with the same values that really feel the same way. But very often, you have to do some planning. What were the most important things you had to do to put these groups together? Understanding, supports, mindsets, experiences, what went into that? What were some key things? Let's start to go on your pieces of paper. Yeah, Myron.
So I work at Emory University and Emory Healthcare, and we have a similar group, not looking specifically at outcomes, but how do we encourage the use of human-centered design within our organization? And so we have a number of designers across multiple disciplines that meet every couple of weeks, and we have a community practice. And what we have run into is that you have to have very strong project management and leadership. You need to have somebody that keeps pushing the work forward, right? Keep it going, because people who are volunteering kind of come in and out. You need to have that consistency for the group to maintain momentum.
Okay, thank you for that. One other one.
Yeah, I found that, especially when I was working with students, it was really useful. We could all come into the space correctly. Once a week for 2 hours, and I'd have icebreaker or like just easy like 5-10 minute activity, but I feel like and for the students and for myself too, it was nice to like kind of be centered as I came in, get ready to work, chat about like a conversation starter, and I can kind of get to know them better, and then also like they can take the time and decompress from like all their academic work, get what we're doing sort of on equal footing.
Those are great. And we were faced with some of the same issues. This is just a map to show you where groups of the collaborative come from. 6 countries and quite a few states throughout the United States. It made it a little bit hard to set up our whole group meetings. We would do one early in the morning and then one in the afternoon to be able to work that in. But what became very clear was that this was not going to work if it was 3 or 4 people in Chapel Hill kind of running it. So we had to have an organization that was set up I'm sorry, tell me your name.
I'm Allie.
Allie, a lot like Allie and Maren talked about, where we would be there to provide the structure, but we really needed a decentralized operation for this to really capture the diversity and the thoughts of people that were here and working with us on a global level. One of the other things that I would mention too that we adopted, and go back to Jean's conversation a little bit earlier, is the idea of joy. And one of the things, we realized that if we had 40 people on a Zoom, we were not going to have an opportunity for everybody to network with everybody and still get through a productive meeting in an efficient amount of time. So what we did was we were doing breakouts to get work done, but what we found is that those initial breakouts were some of the most popular and enjoyable things that we had. People loved being able to meet other folks that were very passionate about human-centered design, because in a lot of cases, we're on islands. Like, we forget about that here, but when you're in your own place, you might be one of 2 people. Like, there's a handful of us, at Innovate Carolina, but there's 30,000 students there. So really making sure that there was joy in the connection and the work. And what we did was we established these goals for the working groups that developed to take on the key issues. And you're going to hear about those from our partners that are here in just a moment. Voicing the value proposition for human-centered design and research projects, defining relevant human-centered design terms to facilitate harmonization and rigor, right? We have to have clear definitions, just like we did in our last session. Helping to determine how to know if human-centered design is really appropriate for a given project. No sometimes is an acceptable answer. And if it is, demonstrating how to stand up and creating a research project that embeds human-centered design methods. And finally, determining how we can proactively and continuously communicate about human-centered design to important groups and maintain ongoing communication to important people and groups so that more folks understand what it is that we're doing. We did start with a number of definitions, and also understanding too that a lot of this work has already been done. We've not been the first people to try to make these definitions. So we did try to take, or were inspired by a number of things that were a number of paradigms that were already out there, including in global health. So our definition reflects projects that apply 3 core tenets that use standardized methods and activities. Multidisciplinary collaboration to frame problems and co-create solutions with. Centering on people and their needs and contexts. And creativity and iteration to test and monitor the desirability and viability of the solutions that we're proposing. One of the key findings, I think, that we came into because of our group, to be very clear, the collaborative pulled us in this direction. We came at this from a university of people that were really interested in research. But you do the research so that other people can use the research, and those are the practitioners. I'm a physical therapist, and so that interconnectedness between research and practice is really important. And as we try to distinguish between those 2 things, one of the things that I think we have learned is you don't distinguish them. They're very, very clearly synchronous and interconnected. And so what we've come up with is that human-centered design is applied across research and practice sectors and areas to systematically collect, share, and apply findings that capture impact and learning. And what I would mention too is that as we've set this structure up, it is very consistent with a lot of the core tenets of relational networks, interconnected, collaborative, and decentralized, which is the entire way that we set up our organization. The University of North Carolina bought the licenses for the Miro boards. We convened the meetings, we ran the Zoom rooms, and we kept up with our team leads that were set up The one woman who's not here is in Munich, in 4 different states with people from around the country. So we were there to keep moving, to set the deadlines and keep the work going. Very systems oriented. We used frameworks that you'll see a little bit in a few minutes. Ethical and inclusive, and then certainly defining for. This was a central tenet. We didn't want to just decide what the definitions or decide what the work was. We wanted to engage people in it. In research, that involved creating knowledge about the human-centered process. It could be used, that could be generalized for other applications. Or the human-centered design could be used as a technique or method to inform a design or integrate it into the research process of another discipline. So it could be a part of a research project. And then in practice, playing an important role advancing the design of systems, artifacts, or services. And in these cases, placing less of a benefit on disseminating generalizable findings. We recognize that when you're in practice, there is quite an impact when you're staring across the table or staring across the room at somebody, and there is a benefit to what it is that you're doing, and you don't have to tell a ton of people about it to know that it made a difference. We also understand that you could have great projects or great designs that have other things going on besides human-centered design. So this idea of dosage or human-centered design playing a part in what we're doing, and taking this from the Designing for Health framework, design as a spark, where design methods spark or inspire new ideas, thinking, or concepts. As an ingredient, where design is used in combination with other tools or other approaches, is just a piece. And quite honestly, those of you that are clinicians or that are in practice, that's how you kind of do the rest of your work. Or design is an end-to-end process, where the program is scoped to match and design a process through its entire cycle. And with that, to get into the nuts and bolts of what our group did, I will turn it over to Stacy.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to invite Saad and Liz up with me, because all of us, in addition to Montana, really worked as a team on this for the last several months for sure. And we were all able to meet yesterday at UNC to, Liz and Bill were kind enough to convene some folks to kind of give us some initial feedback. So we really are doing a lot of this in real time. So what I'd like to do, just really sort of high level, is after we went through all of the goals, and of course the goals changed over time, as Bill mentioned, we really did lean into the desires of the people that we worked with all throughout. Sometimes people could come for a lot of meetings, sometimes they sort of popped in and out, and all of that was perfectly fine. When it was all said and done, we, I guess, landed pretty much on these 4 areas. They're not even really prototypes yet, more like concepts. The first was the fit and readiness. So is this project something that is applicable, that design thinking or human-centered design can be applicable for? And then also a little bit around the readiness, which I will talk about. We have a method matchmaker and a project journey map, which Liz and Saad will talk about. And then last, we have a very loose idea of an evaluation matrix, just to kind of get to that idea of definitions and quality. And a lot of that came as a result of work that we were doing with researchers, and in particular, funders of a lot of this work, NIH funders, reviewers, that type of thing. So fit and readiness, this is the one Montana and I were the leads on this, and really it looks like it's really two different areas, as I mentioned. First is whether or not human-centered design is suitable for this project, and as Bill mentioned, as we go through and sort of asked a few questions, if the answer is no, the answer is no, and that's perfectly fine. Rather to know early and not waste a lot of time and resources. And then the second piece of it was really about the readiness, and we sort of looked at readiness in sort of 3 different ways. Number one, is the leadership ready for this? A lot of times, especially in practice, these are initiated by project owners, many of them who have very little understanding of what human-centered design is or what it can bring to the table. And so we wanted to make sure that we are not setting up teams for failure. So understanding, are they ready? Are they comfortable with the ambiguity that it sometimes leads to, the resources, the time, etc. And then the other piece of that is the team itself. Is the team well equipped to do this work? Do they have is it the right team? Has the team built the psychological safety to be able to be successful? Do they have the experience necessary? And so those were, really kind of thinking about what does this look like for, for our decision makers to be able to look at this. And yesterday, we convened several folks, and this is just some high level key retreat takeaways. As we opened it up, and again, we had practice, we had researchers there. There was value that was recognized by basically everyone. Everyone sort of had a story about, oh my gosh, we did this project and the project owner had no idea what this was. And so they were able to share some of those pain points. And so, really felt like there was some value in exploring this further. One of the things that someone brought up that was really key was originally we sort of talked about it as an assessment, and assessment's probably not the right word or the right framing. And so right now we're playing around with the idea of a launch kit or a startup kit. And again, even though we have decided throughout this that the practice and the research role are very well connected, there are some needs that, that are a little bit tailored to each of those audiences as well. So I will go to the side and let my colleagues take it away.
All right, so for us, me and Liz, our group was very focused on the idea of how can we build rigor in human-centered design projects, and how can we operationalize definitions, how can we build relationships, given that we've been speaking from this morning on relationships between different audiences and different team players in a HCD project, focusing a lot on research and practice, researchers, practitioners. So what we did at the very beginning is talk a lot about the human-centered design processes, human-centered design definition, human-centered design tools. How do we envision HCD taking role in research? How do we envision HCD taking role in practice? Are there differences between these types of projects? All of that stuff. So we had lots and lots of conversations. We used the Miro board as a tool to facilitate those communications and connections. Liz did a wonderful job with all these templates that really engage people in learning and working about things. But we came across this, how might we question after all these discussions, which is how might we support users of human-centered design to determine and communicate how they integrate HCD into their projects. And to do so, we kind of landed on two concepts. The first one is the method matchmaker, and the second one is the journey mapping. I will talk a little bit about the method matchmaker. So from the name, basically, it's kind of aiming to match methods. Now, what methods are we talking about? We're talking about methods of practice and methods of research. So when we say research project, the focus is more on building knowledge, advancing knowledge, publishing, etc. When we say practice, the focus is more on let me get a solution to a certain problem after, of course, reframing it and all of that stuff. So the idea is, can we kind of like minimize that gap between researchers and practitioners by building this tool where, as a practitioner, I can ask to translate the tools and the HCD processes that I'm using into more of a research terminology or research language or connections to existing methods and vice versa. What you see here is a beautiful piece of template of a Miro board where we tried to ask people to prototype this, and they went to town with this. It was a beautiful session where you can see lots of different ideas of method matchmakers. The very last one is the HCD research translator, where people envisioned like kind of a chatbot or an app where a researcher can ask questions and get answers in the human-centered design practitioner terminology and vice versa. There were ideas regarding like having a kiosk where there are conversations between researchers, practitioners, and others. One of the things that we envisioned is that, as I mentioned, where you have the HCD language being translated into a research language, vice versa. This is kind of the wireframe that we used yesterday to engage the audience with us, to collect some feedback on this, to learn more. Is it needed? Do you see yourself using this? What are the challenges, etc.? And these are some of the learnings. So we learned that practitioners and researchers, because we had both in the room yesterday, appreciated the value of the tool. They kind of started also bringing up some resources that exist out there that they asked to be used to build this tool, if we are to build this tool. We kind of got some thoughts around like, oh, this is looking like an HCD specific chat GPT kind of thing. So I don't know if we're gonna reach the stage, but that's what we were learning. One thing that they raised up also is that the tool needs to specifically ask the user about who you are, like how are you coming to the tool as a researcher or as practitioner? And as a researcher, I'm going to ask you about your data collection methods or data analysis methods. If you're a practitioner, I'm going to ask you about what's your HCD methods that you're using, and kind of like so that the tool knows how I'm going to translate and how I'm going to be useful in terms of, again, connecting practitioners and researchers. Some concerns that they raised. One is results are only as good as inputs. Will take some time to build trust, especially if a human element is in there. The kiosk thing that we talked about, it's going to be an issue to build trust between two people who didn't build yet the common terminology, and of course people in the tool. And the last thing I want to say is we wanted to get practitioners and researchers in the room, and I think we succeeded. And the fact that they kind of gave positive feedback around this is really encouraging. So we'll see how. I'll pass it over to Liz.
Hi, everyone. Click. So the tool or the concept that I'm going to talk about is this HCD project journey map tool, which is essentially taking the method that we use or the activity that we do with the people that we're designing with usually and just applying it to our own work. It's very meta, it's great. And we did a similar process to the method matchmaker, honestly, like last week. You are seeing things that we are building in real time. This happened on Thursday, a week ago, on Zoom, where we just asked people, what would this look like? And could you give us a template? Could you give us an idea? Could you give us a storyboard for what could be helpful if you were to take the ideas of a journey map or the template or the framework of a journey map and think about how it could be useful for you when you are planning out your process, when you are doing maybe in the moment reflection or pivot points or decision making, and also potentially as an artifact at the end of your project, something that could document everything that you're learning and those moments along the way. So here are some great things. And we did some voting, as you can see, the dots. And this idea of an HCD fortune teller was really, really popular. And it's sort of the way that they described it in addition to this image was like almost like tarot cards or like reading from a card deck with prompting questions. And we sort of took this idea and combined it with a couple of these other ideas that had a bit of like a timeline. And so this was sort of me taking this idea of tarot cards and like pulling a couple of them, prompting questions, whose voices need to be heard, what are your blind spots, things like that. And asked people just yesterday to fill in a template of if you had this journey, what are those moments in your project? Is it stages or typical phases? There's a difference between stages and phases, I'm sure. And like what those real moments are in your project and what would be really interesting prompting questions to think about along the way if you had a deck. And the great thing about giving people really ambiguous templates is that you get really interesting information back that is outside of maybe what you asked for. So someone actually took my template and made iteration the paper airplane. And that in itself was really cool learning. And some of these things that we took away from this activity that happened yesterday, last night, again, happening in real time, is that people are seeking iterative tools to support an iterative process. So how can we create templates to facilitate the way that we go throughout our processes to make sure that we're doing our processes justice. To have storytelling being a component of mapping. When I ask people about process documentation or documentation in general, people were like, just really like, it's long reports, it's meeting notes, it's this and this. Like, ask me a story. Can I record this prompt and have that be something that I keep as an artifact, or like submit to my funder or something like that? The value of HCD really being in the process came out as really underappreciated. Like we know the magic is the process. So why can't we share the process and celebrate the process the way that we celebrate our outcomes and our results? That's the real magic. That's the ROI for me. And then there's potential for this tool to also promote accountability and interactivity. So really making this something that is dynamic and a way to seek input and reflection from lots of different participants in this process. And I'll pass it back to Stacy. Okay.
Wrap it up here. So the last one really did get into that idea of looking at, how do we measure that process and how do we measure those outcomes? And I don't know if evaluation rubric is the right word. We're still, sort of wordsmithing all of that. But essentially, it's to assess the value of this in a project or a program, trying to use as specific and measurable guidelines as we can without imposing, a very sort of top-down structure. But we do need to have some clear standards, like for example, if a reviewer is looking at a proposal, whether or not this is a valid or effective use of HCD. So the clear standards are obviously really important, and then also how the team approaches this. And a lot of this I should also mention, we had, like I said, amazing group members. Some of this work came from the folks at Alacrity. We had several of their team members that have been on our working groups, and so they have been incredibly generous sharing resources that have been, pretty good for serving as catalysts. So for us, on the evaluation rubric, obviously pretty, not a big shocker, but we did find a pretty distinctive need between researchers and practitioners on this. As Liz mentioned, any of this needs to be accessible and approachable. We don't want to add to the burden of paperwork and just making it so prescriptive that people don't want to do it. We do want to make sure that we are honoring the process, as Liz mentioned, the magic of it as well as the outcomes. And then a lot of people talked about this, the feelings that they had with regard to the process. And so, how do we capture that? So again, we've got some really good feedback, but I think for us, since we're here and we're talking about relational and relationships and relational design, I think a lot of the things that we've talked about today have been how we as design educators or facilitators work with other people. This was really a good example of how we work with each other. We had never worked with each other before. In many cases, we didn't even really know each other. I mean, our first, some of these first Zooms were like, hi, my name is, and what do you do? And finding out where people were coming from and, really trying to get that, those connections in there. So a lot of it took probably much longer than Bill and them expected, because we did have to create psychological safety. We had to get to know each other. It was funny yesterday when we all got together, it was the first time we met in person. And then like Mara and today, she's been on our working groups. Today was the first time we met in person. So I think that this really shows the value of the relationships and even the importance of getting together. This virtual combined in-person, the virtual combined with the in-person groups are really important. We also felt like this was a good way of showing how we can all co-create together. Again, we always talk about co-creating with our users, but in this case, we got to do this together. We also mentioned the importance of the support. And so, Innovate Carolina did a lot of this work for us. Aashka, who is amazing. She's defending her dissertation next week. And in addition to all of that, she was sending us emails, keeping us organized, putting together our Google Drives, doing our, all of these amazing things so that we didn't have to do all of that. So the support, I think, is really important. And then again, as we mentioned, designing with was key. I think for me, at least, one of the best parts of this has been connecting, obviously, with my friends here, but also just getting to know everybody else and where they were coming from. And just random stories throughout our time really did serve as huge foundations for a lot of our work. So with that, we will close. If there's any questions or comments, we're happy to take them. I have no idea where we are at.
So what's next? What's next?
Bill?
What's the output?
Yeah, we can.
There's a lot of educators, and we had the conversation that we've been having the conversation all along, is that if you do your course evaluations at the end of the course, it doesn't really give the students who respond to the course evaluation an opportunity to take advantage of it. So we're somewhere in the middle right now. So the feedback that we got from our retreat yesterday and the feedback that we get today through some of the post-it notes and the questions we have here are going to inform the next level of prototype testing. So these ideas that were generated as concepts throughout the spring that were lightly prototyped yesterday and presented today are now going to be iterated and go back out into the community so that we can start to put together, going back to our original goals, not only the definitions, but also some of the tools that can help folks like us or people that we're working with that might have early human-centered design intention to be able to incorporate it into what they do. So the next steps are to prototype these ideas and to come out and disseminate the findings, right? That's number 4, to be able to tell folks about what we've done, not only at meetings like this, but also hopefully through some white and peer-reviewed publications. And then to go out and do the stuff, to use them and do the work. And I should ask if there's any questions online. Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we just email to join or?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
Thank you for the prompt. You can email me directly, wromani@unc.edu. And we would also, even if you don't want to join, if you have questions about the tools, the process, we really just like talking to other designers that have other experiences about designing. And I think that's it's been one of the great benefits of having our space, the resources that we do as part of Innovate Carolina to be able to support amazing designers in different walks of life from different places. So we love talking about this stuff. Or at dinner tonight. Yeah.
You talked about the diversity of people in the collaborative. Can you just give some examples of the range of roles that people have in that group?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. We took that piece out. We recognize that to keep 40-some people involved, we couldn't have 40 team leads and we couldn't have four teams with 5 people. People wanted to be part of it, but couldn't necessarily invest that amount of time. So we had the steering committee, which was essentially the group that started last summer. Once we used the collaborative as a whole to define the different areas that we wanted to work with, we had these folks step up and say, hey, I would like to be able to lead a team. And then we had folks say, hey, I might not want to lead the team, but I'm really interested in dissemination. And so we had folks that would be working about every other week and doing work in between to help inform these concepts and put the sticky notes on to be able to vote. But we also had advisory folks. So people that might have expertise, they might not be in a role that allowed them to spend a lot of time on this. They could be used on call for their expertise and still be able to be engaged and be part of it. We had 6 whole group collaborative meetings throughout the year. So about every other month where we were getting everybody together. And we started to meet with the leads monthly and then bi-weekly as we were getting a little bit closer, and then they're doing their work. So it is a range of roles that people have to, but I appreciate that question. Just took that out for today. Perhaps one for you if you're interested in participating with us throughout the spring and maybe into next year.
I was one of the people who attended yesterday. I just want to commend because it was a great event, packed tightly, and you were really nice hosts and very cool how you got us to interact, so thank you for that.
No, we need to thank you. And I say there's not a time that we meet that I can't thank these folks enough, because they're really the folks that are on the ground doing a lot of the work and driving our ears to the rest of the world doing this work with you. So thank you for everything you've done. And thank you, Danielle, for hosting all of us coming together.
Thank you. You can see here like creating community, creating relationships across worlds, across, organizations to try to learn and be together. And so I really appreciate that. If we can give them a round of applause. Talk about Innovate Carolina as a part of your introduction yet or not?
No, but you know what, maybe I'll do that quickly and we can just have dinner tonight, not worry about it.
No, absolutely, and I just want to say we're so grateful for them to help us sponsor this opportunity to come together. I know this is an incredibly hard time to hold space, to travel here, to be here at all with everything else going on. And it's because of their partnership that helped to make more of this possible for all of you. And I'd like to give you a chance to say a little bit more about that.
Very gracious, and I won't make it too long. Innovate Carolina is the nickname for the university's Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development unit. And so we sit in the Chancellor's office as the administrative group. Innovate Carolina includes our tech transfer office. That's like 32 or 33 of the 55 people that work for Innovate Carolina. We report to a vice chancellor, so it's at a pretty high level. We also have a brand new building that serves as a junction between the university and the community. So we have a group that does the Impact Hub and our economic development and a lot of the programming there. So they are very much outwardly facing, working with entrepreneurs in the community, as well as founders and entrepreneurs and students at the university. And then our group, Design and Innovation for the Public Good, has been around for about a year and a half. We came together, we had a director of social innovation and we had a design thinking lead. Many of you know Liz Chen, who we had for part-time, and she's also full-time in the Gillings School of Global Public Health. And I had done a lot of work with the University of North Carolina. Is their primary entrepreneurship program is not in the business school. We don't have engineering. It's in the College of Arts and Sciences. And when I was at Loyola in Maryland, we were putting together an innovation entrepreneurship program in the humanities. And so I always looked at Innovate Carolina and what they had and thought that these things worked seamlessly together. And when I got there, in what was the social innovation role, we found that they were separate but didn't need to. And so we created what we called the unit in innovation, design and innovation for the public good, which we thought reflects the way that we actually do the work. It's human-centered design as a vehicle to do innovation, and then as part of our mission as a flagship university for the state, we are creating public good for the people of the state of North Carolina with a definition that makes that using a humanistic approach to create societal and economic benefit that all parties agree provides benefit. So it's not just, if we take Stacy Bark's work, it's not just the regimes of support and the enterprise doing something and creating economic wealth. We also have the communities involved in it. At its core, that is the fundamental mission of the University of North Carolina. So with that, we're very blessed in that we have a very nice building and some resources and support. And so we love being able to support pieces like this. And to be clear, Danielle doesn't need our support. This is what she's got going on here is wonderful, and the community of people that are supporting her. So we're actually feeling very fortunate that we can be involved in this way and to contribute what she's put together here, and for the venue and mechanism to be able to talk about our work. So we invite you at any point to join us. Chapel Hill's beautiful this time of year, unless you have allergies. But we always welcome guests and collaborations. So thank you for this chance to